Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. For months, Trump defenders have alleged that Robert Mueller's investigation is tainted with partisan politics. They've noted, for example, the strikingly high percentage of prosecutors on Mueller's team who are also major Democratic donors. The president himself has frequently echoed these charges, implying that the investigation is a partisan witch hunt concocted by his enemies to overturn last fall's election results, basically a coup. We haven't joined that chorus. Prosecutors, like military officers and surgeons, are trained to rise above their own politics in the service of duty, and most of them do that. In the absence of hard evidence to the contrary, it seemed wise to give this investigation the benefit of every doubt and wait for the outcome. We're Americans. We believe in the fair application of justice. We think that's what normally happens. Well, unfortunately, it's getting harder to maintain that faith. 2 days ago, news broke that a key figure in the Mueller investigation, a longtime FBI official named Peter Strzok, had been removed from his job for sending highly political text messages to his mistress, who's another FBI official. Apparently, those texts attacked President Trump and expressed affection for Hillary Clinton. Now, ordinarily, this would not rate a headline. Even career government officials are allowed to have political views. But this is no ordinary moment. Peter Strzok is at the very center of the two most politicized Justice Department cases in a generation. Strzok was, first of all, deeply involved in the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server last year. At the conclusion of that investigation, it was apparently Strzok who changed the FBI's description of what Hillary did from grossly negligent to extremely careless. Now, the first description is a crime, the second merely a blunder. So in effect, Peter Strzok exonerated Hillary Clinton in the middle of a presidential campaign. But then he kept going. Strzok went on to sign the document, the official document that opened an investigation into Russian meddling in the election. The very same investigation the Hillary campaign was calling for at the time, the one that has now completely overwhelmed the Trump presidency. And if that wasn't enough, it was also Peter Strzok who, according to news accounts this afternoon, oversaw the FBI's interviews in January with General Mike Flynn at the White House, the ones that resulted in Flynn pleading guilty to felony charges on Friday. Apparently, Flynn had no idea he was being interviewed, and that would explain why he didn't have a lawyer present. If true, that would qualify as trickery. It would be unethical. Again, like Zelig, Peter Strzok in the middle of it. So you can see why Strzok's politically charged text to his mistress might matter at this point. What exactly did Strzok say in those texts? We still don't know the answer to that because, for reasons it will not even explain, the FBI won't tell Congress. So all the way back in August, the House Intelligence Committee sent a subpoena to the FBI asking for, among other things, information on why Peter Strzok was removed from Mueller's team. But instead of replying, the FBI simply stonewalled and said nothing. Well, that's not just infuriating, it's unconstitutional because the FBI is not its own government. It's a single agency within the executive branch of our federal government. It's accountable to, among others, the United States Congress, and therefore accountable to voters. Keep in mind, nobody elected Peter Strzok to anything. You elect members of Congress to keep people like Peter Strzok in line. Now, when people like Peter Strzok decide that Congress has no power over them, they're giving you the finger, and they're threatening democracy. That should not be allowed. And yet, amazingly, it's common. It happens literally all the time in Washington. Last summer, for example, Congress sought basic information about the infamous Trump dossier. Did the FBI pay for it or part of it? Did FBI agents believe the contents or use them to drive their Russia investigation? These are basic and central questions, and yet the FBI just ignored them. They didn't feel like answering. And they rarely do. Back in 2015, two Islamic extremists attempted to shoot up a Muhammad cartoon contest in Garland, Texas. Remember that? Later, it emerged that an undercover FBI agent knew the two shooters personally and had even egged them on to, quote, tear up Texas. That agent even traveled with the terrorists to the scene at Garland, was present right before the attack, and tried to flee as it began. It's hard to believe that actually happened in America, but it did happen. You'd probably like to know why it happened, wouldn't you? Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin would like to know. He's repeatedly asked the FBI to explain why it shielded terrorists, how it could have failed to stop the shooting that happened later. And yet he still doesn't know. Senator Johnson's requests repeatedly have been stonewalled by the FBI. A year before that, in 2014, Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma asked the Justice Department information about the gun that the Tsarnaev brothers used to kill a police officer right after the Boston bombing. He never received an answer to that question. We could go on. There are many examples of this, but the point is clear. The FBI is out of control, and not just in the Trump investigation, but much more broadly. An agency charged with enforcing the law clearly considers itself above the law, and that's a threat to you and every American, no matter who you voted for. Joe DeGenova is a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and he joins us tonight. Joe, given the centrality of Peter Strzok in these two investigations, Hillary email and the current Trump-Russia investigations, on what pretext could the FBI be denying these texts to Congress?
It's very difficult to see how they have any basis for denying Congress access to this data. They publicly leaked the reason that he was fired, removed from the case. So there can't be a personnel reason for doing it.
Right.
And even if there were, it wouldn't matter. Congress has a right to that data. They can receive it. They have to receive it. I think what's going on at the Bureau right now is very, very serious. It's very depressing for a former federal law enforcement official. This is not your mother's FBI. What's wrong with the FBI is not the average everyday agent. They're great. It's the management at the FBI that is the problem, and that management has not improved with the arrival of Mr. Wray. I cannot understand how Chris Wray, the current FBI director, can tolerate having Andrew McCabe on his staff at this point, given his history and his track record. I think the FBI is in very serious trouble. It started with James Comey. Comey, the dirtiest cop in America, destroyed the FBI's reputation with his bizarre personal behavior beginning way before his July 5th news conference. The Bureau is in trouble. It needs a major overhaul, and if it continues to resist Congress, I believe the contempt of Congress for the current director and other people in the agency is absolutely justified.
So this is the most powerful agency in the federal government. They can literally break down the front door of your house and take your freedom away, and they do that quite a bit.
Or show up at your house in the morning while you and your wife are in bed in order to frighten you like they did with Mr. Manafort. What a disgusting, awful display of raw political power, not law enforcement power, political power. I think the Bureau has been politicized by Comey. I don't know what Wray's going to do about it, but he has a short time frame to fix it.
Is it conceivable, and this was reported this afternoon, we haven't confirmed it, that General Flynn at the White House in January, newly installed National Security Advisor, meets with the FBI, talks to them. They don't tell him this is a formal interview, and it's on the basis of that that he's charged and pleads to perjury.
It was Andrew McCabe who sent those agents there, by the way. The man who...
But can you do that?
Yes, you actually can. But here's what's disturbing about it. It's technically okay to do that. But you have to ask yourself, given the history of everybody involved in that case, who were involved in the Hillary email server case, where they conducted a totally irresponsible, unprofessional criminal investigation, and then they turn up the heat on this investigation of Flynn, the same agency. This is politics. The Bureau has been politicized. You compare the email server investigation of Hillary Clinton with the investigation of General Flynn and President Trump's aides, and what you have is a despicable politicization of the Bureau. They can no longer insist that they are fair at what they're doing.
Well, it's the same charge. I mean, the same guy, Peter Strzok, apparently let the former Secretary of State off the hook for lying and then pushed the indictment on felony charges of the National Security Advisor for lying. So how is that?
Mr. Strzok has been hopelessly compromised since he expressed his political views to his paramour, with whom he was another FBI official that he was having a sexual relationship with. Strzok is no longer credible inside the Bureau. That's why he's now in the Human Resources Department.
Right. Just shakes the faith of every American in our justice system.
And it should.
And the cost is high. It undermines the country, quite apart from this investigation,
Indeed.
I would say. Joe, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Newly released documents show more evidence of FBI misbehavior. It is depressing to report this, but it's real. When news leaked that Attorney General Loretta Lynch held a private meeting with Bill Clinton, the famous one on the tarmac, the FBI apparently was far more concerned, according to newly released documents, with finding who had leaked the news of that meeting than it was with the meeting itself, which was obviously unethical. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. He sued to obtain these documents. We wouldn't know about them if it weren't for him, and so we're grateful to have him on set tonight. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tucker.
So tell us what you learned from these.
Well, first of all, the FBI didn't want to give us these documents. We only found out about them through another lawsuit because the FBI, when we asked them for Clinton Lynch Tarmac records, said they didn't have anything.
So they lied to you?
They lied to us.
And then, by the way, you're acting under, I believe, FOIA, the Freedom of Information.
Yeah, we had a federal lawsuit. They said they couldn't find anything, but another lawsuit about Tarmac records, the Justice Department found records that involved the FBI.
So here you have a law enforcement agency ignoring federal law, just to be clear.
That's right. And they took 6 weeks to turn over the 29 pages, and they show that the FBI was more concerned about a whistleblower in the local Phoenix Police Department, they think, who was talking about the meeting and how it happened, than about the meeting itself. And they talk about trying to find the guy, and they talk about reaching out to the local Phoenix.
Trying to find the whistleblower?
Yeah, trying to find him. They didn't want to. They wanted to get him, and punish him presumably. And then secondly, they were reaching out to the Phoenix FBI office to stem any further damage. I guess prevent any further leaks about the truth.
So the agency charged with protecting us from terrorism and crime is spending its time trying to punish people who leak its own misdeeds, is what you're saying.
That's right, and trying to prevent further leaks about the meeting between Bill Clinton and Attorney General Lynch. Remember, that meeting was never supposed to be disclosed. It was only uncovered thanks to a local, I think, ABC News reporter in Phoenix, and then you had other law enforcement back up the counts of the meeting, and that's what set the FBI off. We haven't gotten any documents showing the FBI was concerned about the meeting itself, which, according to the Attorney General of the United States at the time, General Lynch, she admitted it cast a shadow over her Clinton investigation.
As a result of that meeting.
Well, she said she did, but she actually didn't. She made the final decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton a few weeks after meeting with her husband, a witness and putative target.
So she and the Attorney General Holder, who preceded her, are both obviously political and hacks, I think. But you would think that the agents who serve underneath them in the FBI would be non-political and be really worried about basic ethical questions like this one. But you don't see that they were.
This was a leadership. I mean, we're getting the top-level emails. So as Joe mentioned earlier, the leadership of the FBI was ruined by James Comey and the politics of trying to protect Hillary Clinton. The Justice Department and the FBI became arms of the Clinton campaign last year. And frankly, it continued into the Trump administration, as we saw with the ambush interview of General Flynn. I think there is a significant crisis not only at the FBI, but at the Justice Department. We had this other FBI agent involved in the Clinton email investigation, also involved in the Russia investigation, a key decision maker in both investigations. Both investigations, in my view, have been irredeemably compromised. The Clinton investigation needs to be reopened, and the Mueller investigation needs to be shut down until we figure out how badly it's been politicized in the least.
And it's not just the inherently political investigations that have troubling elements. Some of their criminal investigations, the ones into the mass shootings, I think raise questions that are striking. We're going to Vegas tomorrow, in fact, to look into the FBI investigation.
We still don't have basic information about the Vegas shooting.
That's why we're going. Tom, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How will a longtime Clinton ally respond to these recent revelations about Mueller's team and the FBI? We thought we'd bring one on to find out. Stay tuned. General Mike Flynn lied about conversations he had had, and that was a criminal offense. Hillary Clinton lied about illegally sending classified information on an illegal private email server, and that was just careless, according to the FBI. All this used to be baffling, but the recent revelations about FBI agent Peter Strzok suggest another interpretation. Supporters in the FBI were looking out for Hillary Clinton during the last campaign. Richard Goodstein advised Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign in both 08 and 16, and he joins us tonight. Thanks a lot, Richard, for coming on.
Happy to do it.
I'm not a conspiracy nut, and I actually resent the implication that our justice system is not on the level, because I think it actually has been over time fairest in the world. But the fact that the guy at the center of the email investigation and now the Russia investigation is a partisan, and clearly he is, and he deemed Hillary's lying just a mistake and Flynn's lying a felony, suggests it's not on the level, and really bothers me, and I would think would bother you too.
Yeah. So I disagree with a couple of the premises of your comment. One you said about Hillary lied. James Comey, under oath, said no. Actually, they had no basis for saying that she lied to them when she testified, and when she talked about information going through her server, what she was referring to is nothing that was marked classified, right? And ultimately,
well, there were classified documents marked classified. There were.
Well, and so there were three that Comey said under oath.
Right.
One of which was about a condolence call to the president of Malawi.
Right.
Right. So that's the kind of stuff. And even the State Department said that was actually human error, that they should not have been marked classified.
Okay, but let's be. I mean, let's be totally real. And I don't want to relitigate the Hillary thing, but Hillary Clinton was able to talk to the FBI not under oath. So she faced no perjury trap in her conversations.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, she did lie. She said no classified information on the server. There was. We can argue about whether it was significant or not. It was classified.
Okay.
I'm not going to defend Flynn, who I think made a huge moral error in lobbying for Turkey. But the guy just pled to a felony for lying in a conversation with FBI agents that was under oath.
Yeah.
So there's a double standard.
So Hillary Clinton did not lie to the FBI, according to James Comey and every other piece of information we have. There is a standard, and I think your viewers need to know this, about what constitutes a possibility of a crime for what she did regarding her emails. One needed intent. Grossly negligent is not intent. You need actual intent to disclose it. That's what David Petraeus did with his mistress. Hold on, no. And the second is espionage. And even the most addled viewer doesn't think she did that.
I'm not charging her with espionage.
Exactly. That's why it's not criminal.
Or mass murder either.
Exactly.
I'm saying that General Flynn just pled to a felony. He can't vote, own a gun. His name is tarnished for life because he lied in his conversation with FBI agents. Hillary Clinton got a special deal where she was not speaking under oath to FBI agents. Who gets that deal? I know a lot of people who've been interviewed by the FBI. Some have gone to jail after those conversations, and not one of them got that deal. How the hell did she get that? Let's be honest. That is unusual. You wouldn't get it. I wouldn't get it.
Yeah,
she got it.
When you're talking to a federal agent, whether you've been put under oath or not, it's still a triable offense if you lie. Okay, that's the standard from a legal standpoint. I understand you're trying to make something out of, in my respect, nothing, but the fact that she was not put under oath is frankly not relevant. Just like Strzok is not relevant. Her emails are out there. Just like Loretta Lynch is not relevant because she did not make the decision. That was all Comey.
So Strzok is the one, apparently, and we're still filling in the blanks, but as of today, we believe that Strzok is the one who changed the language in Comey's speech that initially described Hillary's email server as, quote, grossly negligent, which would be a crime.
No, it needs intent. Sorry.
Well, but look,
it's actual.
Hold on.
No, it's not an interpretation.
Gross negligence can be a crime. Extreme carelessness cannot be. He changed it from a potentially actionable offense to an innocuous one.
Your viewers will believe you rather than me. I would ask any one of them to go to look at the statute, which requires specific intent, not negligence, intent to disclose information to somebody else. Nobody thinks that by virtue of setting up her server the way she did, she intended to put it out there.
You're intentionally, I think, missing my point, which is in the description of it, he changed it from something that you could argue is criminal to something you cannot argue is criminal. Negligence could potentially be criminal. Carelessness never is. He changed that. We know at that time he was a partisan rooting for Hillary over Trump. We also know he signed the document that initiated the Russia investigation. Why is it not a big deal that he's a partisan?
Donald Trump said there's a double standard, right, in his tweet. I agree. The fact that Comey had his press conference on July 5th, that was a violation of the rules. The fact that he put out his letter 11 days out, that was a violation of the rules because there were FBI rogue operators. And the fact that he didn't tell the public that the Russians were trying to get Trump elected, that's the double standard that all ran to the benefit of Trump.
You're not going to get me to defend Comey under any circumstances. I'm merely going to repeat what I just said, and I really want your response to it. This guy, Strzok, was at the center of both investigations. Apparently, he was removed from his office because of his partisan politics. Why doesn't the Congress, which provides oversight to the FBI, have the right to see those texts? Of course they do.
I agree with you on that.
Then why in time and again are you seeing the FBI refuse to respond to Congress when its own integrity is in question? That is a cover-up.
There are hundreds of requests for documents from this administration, from senators and House members that have not been responded to.
Yeah. But this is, first of all, this is a big one.
I agree.
And second, every single one should be responded to, because the FBI, look, you're going to regret, you and all the other leftoids who are totally in favor, I'm serious, of the agencies working to overthrow the president you hate, you're going to regret encouraging them to do that.
Well, I don't think any leftoid, and I take myself out of that. Look, I don't think people are asking anything other than the FBI to do its job. I don't think it did its job when it was investigating Hillary or failing to disclose what they knew about Trump and the Russians last fall before the voters went to the polls. That was negligent. That was negligence.
The collusion, you mean?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, the collusion that they just proved on Friday.
What the intelligence community subsequently came out with, saying it's unanimous that the Russians were trying to help Trump. Yeah, that.
So we'll just end on this. You agree with me that the agencies, the intel agencies, the FBI, law enforcement agencies, acting independently of Congress and of the White House as their own little fiefdom, they can do whatever they want, that bothers you?
Yeah.
Good.
I agree that oversight is important.
It's terrifying. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, sure.
Supreme Court just handed a big victory to the Trump people and the travel ban, which they upheld. Mark Stein here to tell us what that means next. That a travel ban affecting 8 countries can go into immediate effect. That decision isn't final. Instead, it simply means the ban, which affects Iran, Sudan, Libya, Chad, North Korea, Somalia, Yemen, can remain in place while the courts evaluate whether or not it's legal. Of the 9 justices, only Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg signaled they opposed letting the ban take effect, of course. So it's a strong sign it will be upheld when and if the court hears the actual case. Mark Stein, thankfully not covered by any of the countries listed in the travel ban. He joins us tonight. Great to see you, Mark.
Hey, good to see you, Tucker.
What does
but
this
he
mean?
could ban me.
He
could ban me. Well, because the president, I mean, you're right, it's a big victory. But if you take it in harness with the last half hour, essentially you have had, since this administration won a year ago, the permanent bureaucracy and the courts ganging up basically to cripple the executive branch. And the fact that he had to go to court to get a temporary stay in these 2 lower-level court bans on his travel ban actually tells you something about what an insane situation we're in. The statutory language is quite plain. The president has the authority to ban by proclamation any aliens or class of aliens. So he can ban me personally by proclamation. He can ban all Canadians by proclamation. Or he can ban classes of Canadians. He can ban Canadian tap dancers because he thinks they're a threat to the American tap dancing industry. The language in the statute couldn't be plainer, and a horribly politicized judiciary, like the horribly politicized policeman you've been talking about earlier, has pushed language beyond its meaning in order to deny the president his most basic executive authority.
So here's the trend that I'm seeing. Tell me if you see it too. The least democratic parts of our government, which would be the courts and the bureaucracy, neither elected by voters, are getting more powerful, and the most democratic parts, the president and the Congress, are getting less powerful. So the democracy is actually withering right now.
Absolutely. You have a permanent state. President Obama famously said in 2009, elections have consequences. The permanent bureaucracy and the courts are saying to the people, elections have no consequences.
Right.
You can vote for whatever you think you want, but we're going to ban it. We're going to go ahead and conduct business as usual. And that's why this court decision is actually, the fact that it's necessary is an affront to any kind of self-government by the people and for the people.
But what's so funny? But our elites love that. I mean, it's so in their Orwellian turn, they keep warning us that the election of someone they don't like is a threat to democracy. Democracy dies in darkness. But the control of the federal government by people who've never been elected, whose names you don't know, the permanent bureaucracy, that's democracy? I mean, it's literally the opposite of what's true.
Yeah, and what's disturbing to me is you find this attitude in Brussels, for example, where there's a bunch of civil servants that seriously think they know better than the peoples of 28 nations. And the whole point about the US system is that it was created to prevent this kind of divide between the governed and the people. And this, and actually, I think they should have gone further, the Supreme Court. They should have, in a sense, skipped the temporary stay and just declared that this is obviously within the terms of the President's statutory authority, and that if you object to it, you might as well do what Democrats and the civil service seem to want to do, and that is to simply pass a constitutional amendment to say that in the event, God forbid, any Republican should happen to be elected president, then the entire executive branch shall just be put in the deep freeze for 4 years and will cease to do anything whatsoever, because that's what they've been trying to do since last November.
And that's basically what's happened, unfortunately. Mark Stein, thank you. That's a deep analysis. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Well, a gun control group is using horrifying photographs of a murdered woman lying covered in blood on the ground from the Las Vegas shooting 2 months ago in order to raise money. The defender of that approach is here next. Stay tuned. A gun control group is literally trying to raise money from the blood of Las Vegas shooting victims. A group called Stop Handgun Violence sent flyers to the White House and members of Congress, inviting them to, quote, wipe the blood off your hands and end mass shootings. They also sent the flyer out to reporters. The flyers show images of the Las Vegas shooting, one of which is so gory that we blurted out on the screen. It's a very clear picture of a woman lying dead on the ground, covered in blood. Mark Glaze is a senior advisor to Guns Down. He supports gun control. He joins us tonight. So, Mark, look, I welcome a rational conversation on any topic that might reduce violence, including guns.
Right.
But this isn't an attempt to change minds or to come to an actual solution. This is an attempt to make money off of people's deaths.
Well, look, if this group is trying to raise money this way, I think that's a bad idea. But my only objection, if they're just trying to make members of Congress see these images, is that these images were not graphic enough. They're not as graphic as the average mass shooting.
What would we learn? That shooting people is bad? I mean, I think everybody agrees with that. I mean, it's not. This isn't. I mean, it's not about teaching anybody anything or having people confront the horror. Everyone understands the horror.
No, I actually don't think they do. I mean, I think the problem with gun violence, and it's not different from a lot of different crime problems, is that people see it as a statistic. It's like numbers on a page, or they see the sanitized version that we see on the nightly news or on, on Hollywood movies. When people actually see how devastating any shooting is, but particularly a mass shooting, I mean, I've seen it, and it is shocking. It will force you to think differently about it.
And by the way, this mass shooting's been basically ignored. We're going to Las Vegas tomorrow because we think it's worth figuring out why this happened.
Right.
So I disagree with your premise that people don't understand how horrible it is. They saw it on television. What I'm bothered by is this is not an effort to propose a solution. It's an effort to demonize people they disagree with. Wipe the blood off your hands. Whose hands? Whose hands have blood on them from this shooting?
Well, I think in the view of the people who sponsored this ad, it's people who sort of express thoughts and prayers for the victims when this kind of thing happens.
So
but
if
then
you pray for the victims, you've got blood on your hands?
No, we all pray for the victims. But then after that, if you're
elected... No, we all don't actually pray for the victims.
Well,
a lot of people attacked the idea of praying for the victims.
Well, I do. But then after that, you actually look for a solution like, what about universal background checks? What about banning assault weapons that have no use in self-defense or in hunting?
Okay, so what is the solution in this case? I mean, presumably there are solutions that aren't related to confiscating people's guns or violating their Second Amendment rights. I mean, presumably there are solutions around mental health, for example. But those are of no interest to stop handgun violence. By the way, there were no handguns even used here, whatever. This is like not even related to their supposed mission. But the point is, they only want to talk about what law on the books would have prevented this?
Well, look, in fairness, they did talk about two things. One was background checks was not an issue in this shooting, but they also said we ought to ban assault weapons, and the fact that this guy had a lot of assault weapons.
They said that we renew the federal ban on military-style assault weapons.
Right.
So we had the assault weapons ban.
Right.
It didn't show any decrease in crime during the 10 years it was in place.
Well, not quite true.
It would not, I think that's pretty conclusive. It would not have prevented this because these guns are already in private hands. There are like 100 million of them that are. And so what would be the legislative solution? I've asked this question to like 30 people. Nobody has an answer. They'd rather grandstand and call other people murderers than actually try to find a solution. What's the solution?
Well, you and I have had this conversation, and I'll again say something that a lot of people on my side don't want to say because people will yell at them for it. But the fact is, we need to have fewer guns, and we need to talk about banning entire classes of especially dangerous firearms like assault weapons. And I think we have to talk about not just banning them, but requiring that people allow the government to buy them back.
So universal gun confiscation is what you're talking about.
No, not universal gun confiscation.
You're saying ban a class of firearms. So
yeah,
that would be any rifle with, a capacity of more than one above a certain caliber. I mean, I don't know what the criteria are that you're suggesting, but basically any gun that you would use for deer hunting would be banned.
No, I would make a distinction between long guns that are technically semi-automatic of the kind like my dad uses to hunt, and semi-automatic assault weapons that
to gun owners and hunters like me, these are meaningless distinctions, but let me just get right to the meat of it. What do you do to people who won't sell them back?
I think you at a bare minimum sort of fine them severely for it and build an incentive for them to sell them back.
You ready for the civil war that would ensue when you try and take people's guns? Oh, I'm serious.
I take it seriously, but as you just said, we banned these things for 10 years and the country did not go up in flames.
We didn't ban them, actually. You couldn't sell certain guns, but people had them. I had one at home. Nobody came and took it from me.
So how about half measures? Let's do this. Let's reimpose the ban on all new sales.
The one that didn't work.
On all new sales, and over time, the supply will dry up.
All right. Mark, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Las Vegas shooting remains a mystery more than 2 months later. Tomorrow night, we're going to visit Las Vegas in search for answers. We hope you'll tune in then. A documentary filmmaker visited UC Berkeley to see what students think of the American flag. You probably won't be surprised by the result.
Greatest country on planet Earth that protects all freedoms, right? No?
Despite the tremendous benefits that this country has given its many citizens, an awful lot of people don't like America. Some of them, especially among the young, hate America passionately. They've been taught to by their teachers. But surely only the absolutely deranged would regard America as worse than, say, the Islamic State. Well, maybe not. Filmmaker Ami Horowitz recently traveled to the University of California at Berkeley to see how students there would react to a patriotic display of the American flag. Here's the result.
Greatest country on planet Earth that protects all freedoms, right? No? Greatest country in the world, right?
No, the opposite.
The opposite?
Complete opposite.
No? Why not?
Yeah, Canada's pretty great.
America.
This country.
America. Wow. Why would you say that?
I wanted to see what the reaction would be with, well, another flag that's out there in the news.
I stand against America. ISIS protects Islam. I denounce the United States.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Thank you.
I love that you're saying that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ami Horowitz joins us now. That was infuriating to watch. Did you get anybody who said, God bless America, I'm against ISIS?
Yeah, there were a minority of people who basically when I was out there with the American flag said God bless America or good for you, but they were an extreme minority. It was probably about 5 to 1 who were negative to positive, unfortunately.
So these are the people who are going to be running our country then?
Oh yeah, people always like to say, oh, University of California, Berkeley, it's just some fringe leftist place. This is a temple of higher education, this country. This is a place which produces people in the State Department, lawyers, politicians, leaders of industry. This is a real major university, and it's not some kind of lunatic fringe place, unfortunately.
No, after Stanford, it's the best university in the biggest state in America. Who taught them this?
Say again?
Who taught these students to hate the country they live in?
Well, I think they're professors. I don't think it comes from their parents. I think it comes primarily, if not exclusively, from universities, garbage in, garbage out. And this is what happened when you have years and years and years of teaching these kids that to not have any fidelity to our basic concepts as a country. And I think this whole tenure process also is part of the problem, where you allow these people who you know are spewing hatred against America to continue to teach and educate our kids.
Yeah. It's depressing and, again, infuriating. Ami Horowitz, thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Well, despite routinely regarding America as an evil, racist country, American colleges are also key activists, weirdly, in demanding mass immigration into this evil country. Dozens of schools define themselves as sanctuary campuses opposed to the enforcement of immigration laws. Dozens more denounce the Trump administration's decision to end DACA. They clearly regard open borders as a good thing, even a moral obligation, all of which raises an interesting question. Why don't these schools practice their own version of open borders by instituting an open admissions policy? Wendy Osifo is a college professor at a very prestigious school that I couldn't have gotten into, and she joins us tonight to answer that question. So, Wendy, I'm taking what I'm hearing on college campuses seriously, which is nobody is illegal. You have a right to come here. There's no reason we should exclude people just because they're poor or they're uneducated or they have no skills. We should let them in anyway. Why don't colleges practice that same philosophy on their campuses?
In what manner?
Well, if I am not a tuition-paying member of a college community, why can't I just show up and get a college ID? Illegals can get driver's licenses in California. Why doesn't Harvard or your school issue me a student ID? I go to class for free, eat for free in the dining hall, and have all the privileges of a student at that college. They want that for the country. Why don't they allow that on their own campuses?
Well, some campuses actually do allow that. You mentioned Harvard. Harvard has a policy that if you make a certain amount on your income, you're able to go to that school completely for free.
Oh, no, but you have to go through an admissions process.
You do have to go through
an elitist admissions process, the one that they decry. So they say that we should allow anyone who wants to come here to come to America.
Absolutely.
Okay? But to get into Harvard or the elite school where you work, you need a certain score. You need certain grades, recommendations. You need skills and qualifications. They call that racist when that's applied to immigrants into this country, but you guys get away with doing it at your schools. Why is that?
No, we don't get away with doing that in our schools. And what we're saying is that education and equity is intrinsically woven. We cannot have a society where we have students who coming through the DACA Act and then we say midway through their education, you can no longer be here. And that's what they're trying to preclude.
But then why not have them at your school? Why not just say that your school will reserve, I don't know, 80% of its seats for illiterate refugees?
They're not illiterate. They're not
how about who
illiterate.
don't speak English and can't pay tuition? The same people that you're saying America ought to let in and pay for, and we're racist if we don't. Why doesn't your school allow those people to have student IDs and free meals in the dining hall and get to go to class and get a diploma and get all the privileges that rich kids get at your school?
Well, you're looking at it from a very myopic viewpoint. What you're saying is that we have.
I am?
You are. You're saying.
I'm just being honest.
No, you're not being honest, because we allow individuals who come in from low socioeconomic status to come into the school. We have individuals who are undocumented to come into the school, and then we also allow a great percentage of individuals who are considered legacy to come into the schools. Schools are open borders for all people, not just for one population.
I don't think so, and I found out that the hard way when I applied to them in high school and didn't get into any because I didn't meet the qualifications. That actually happened to me because I didn't meet their arbitrary sense of what was important.
Is that the college's fault, or is that?
No, it's probably my fault,
Right.
actually. I thought that then and I think that now, but I'm hearing on college campuses that you can't keep people out of this country just because they don't know anything or can't speak your language or don't have any money. You have to let them in, and if you don't, you're a racist. So I'm saying, why don't you, well, thank you for conceding that, but why don't you apply the same standards to your college? Why keep it this tiny little elite place?
It's not. It's not.
Well, it is,
it's really not. These universities
What's
are
the admissions
beautiful.
rate at the school you work at?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that.
You're not? Well,
I'm not going to tell you that.
I couldn't have gotten in there. But why should these schools demand that the rest of the country apply no standards at all to anyone coming in, and then take federal dollars to hike their standards so most people born in this country can't get into their schools?
There are standards, and for you to say that individuals who come in through the Deferred Dream Act don't have any standards, that's not correct. They go through a rigorous qualification process.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
How many have been deported?
They go through a rigorous. Well, let's look at this. 61% of them who've been in this country since they're 14, all of them go to college.
No, but it's not just DACA.
You cannot have a criminal record, right? Let's not conflate them.
Those are meaningful, but why not just use the same standards? So we have a diversity lottery that just says because you live in an underserved country, you get to come here. All colleges support that. So why don't we apply that to your school? If you live in Burkina Faso, bam, you get free tuition. Or how about if you're just walking by and you cross onto the campus and just squat in the middle of the quad?
Okay.
I bet they would arrest you, wouldn't they?
Well, Well, why are you looking at it from that lens when we don't look at it from that lens? When it comes to employment practices, can anyone just walk in and say, hey, I want to be Tucker Carlson?
I don't agree with any of this, but I think standards are real and
standards are real, and we use standards.
But colleges argue that the country doesn't have the right to enforce.
That's not what we're arguing. What we're arguing is you cannot illegally deport people who come into this country.
Okay, you can't do that. So next time I squat on your quad, I'll see if you can illegally deport me.
No, you won't do that.
Wendy, thank you.
Thank you.
A man could lose his job simply for coming on this show. That's true. We'll explain it next. Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. For months, Trump defenders have alleged that Robert Mueller's investigation is tainted with partisan politics. They've noted, for example, the strikingly high percentage of prosecutors on Mueller's team who are also major Democratic donors. The president himself has frequently echoed these charges, implying that the investigation is a partisan witch hunt concocted by his enemies to overturn last fall's election results, basically a coup. We haven't joined that chorus. Prosecutors, like military officers and surgeons, are trained to rise above their own politics in the service of duty, and most of them do that. In the absence of hard evidence to the contrary, it seemed wise to give this investigation the benefit of every doubt and wait for the outcome. We're Americans. We believe in the fair application of justice. We think that's what normally happens. Well, unfortunately, it's getting harder to maintain that faith. 2 days ago, news broke that a key figure in the Mueller investigation, a longtime FBI official named Peter Strzok, had been removed from his job for sending highly political text messages to his mistress, who's another FBI official. Apparently, those texts attacked President Trump and expressed affection for Hillary Clinton. Now, ordinarily, this would not rate a headline. Even career government officials are allowed to have political views. But this is no ordinary moment. Peter Strzok is at the very center of the two most politicized Justice Department cases in a generation. Strzok was, first of all, deeply involved in the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server last year. At the conclusion of that investigation, it was apparently Strzok who changed the FBI's description of what Hillary did from grossly negligent to extremely careless. Now, the first description is a crime, the second merely a blunder. So, in effect, Peter Strzok exonerated Hillary Clinton in the middle of a presidential campaign. But then he kept going. Strzok went on to sign the document, the official document that opened an investigation into Russian meddling in the election. The very same investigation the Hillary campaign was